So you can already start to see the variation, and there's only three colors, but the variation in the skin that you can start to pull out with such a limited palette. I just like painting in this way because it also gives me a scene that I can always come back to and revisit and edit as much as I like. There's no you know projected photos that I have to deal with. Yeah, not to say that I don't do that. This is just one way of approaching it that I find enjoyable. This process is definitely not as fast as doing large projections, but it gives me infinitely editable possibilities. And it's kind of nice being able to slap down layers reasonably loosely to see what works, and then go back in and edit any color that I want. Yeah, through layering things up like this, if I get to the end and realize that I need to warm an area up or cool it down, I can just go back into the shader and select it and paint in and out as much as I need. But with this pass, I'm just focusing on basically where the blood flows. So yeah, I won't go too far into the cuticle of the skin running the horn, because I'd imagine it to be reasonably bloodless. The There's a lot of happy accidents I think that happen layering up speckled layers like this, where you'll get two points that'll interact with each other when you're going over the same area, and you'll start to build up blemishes. And like I'll also hand paint in burst capillaries and so forth, but you'll get that kind of effect already happening, which I really like, layering up reds like this. So you'll get a sharp burst in the middle, and then a nice fall off, like the skin's bled back into the skin. And again, still just thinking about the underlying anatomy and still kind of shading it in. I'm going for quite a blotchy finish on this guy, just because, yeah, I do want him to read as quite pale and jaundice, so I want a bit of that yellow to show through in the final product. It's kind of a good way of showing bad circulation, poor circulation, which is good for a good unhealthy look. Yeah, like if you've been really cold and you wash your hands under a hot tap, it's kind of a good time to check for reference. I often think of that. Just trying to get a lot of different effects out of one brush with one color. I think definitely, at least for the first pass or so, and by pass I mean like the first full texturing of a character or creature, it can be quite good to limit your palette. It can be a good way to get everything to start to work together, and then add more complexity to your palette later on if you need to. I'm going to need to be careful of how bruised he ends up looking. I'm wanting a sickly kind of dead look, but I don't want too much bruising. So I might have to go back and knock some blues down in certain areas. Basically, I'm painting from inside the body out, working my way back from the skeleton. As a kind of a general rule, the closer to the surface of the skin you want something to appear, the sharper you want the fall off on your brush. So like burst capillaries will be quite sharp, but if they're bleeding out, that'll soften out as it goes deeper into the skin. If you're painting blood interacting with fat, it's yeah, it's quite soft, and maybe not even necessarily in the fall off of the brush, but just in the opacity and the amount it's blended. So yeah, around the cheekbone area is definitely going to be one of the redder areas, and the ears. Yeah, and painting pretty heavy-handed. This is for two reasons. I can always dial it back, and B, when you get textures into a scene with lights and subsurface, that can pull a lot out of your color information pretty quickly. A lot of that information should be provided by a displacement. Again, I'm using that the crow's feet for that, for burst capillaries. Veining, it's a lovely brush. I'm not going to be too tidy with the inside of the eye sockets, because you're never going to see them in this render. Well, you should never really see them much anyway, but usually a bit cleaner about these things. I'm putting quite a lot of red in the inside rims of the eyes. It seems to be, well, I mean, it's a surefire way to make someone look quite unhealthy. But I've also put a red ring on the outside of the iris before the sclera and the eyes, so I'm kind of hoping it'll all tie together as generally just kind of a bleeding unhealthiness in the eye area. I'm setting just general warm eye areas. Adding some warmth to the chin. So yeah, here I'm using my fine displacement painted earlier, and I'm using it to mask, just to reinforce some of the lines in the lips. You really don't want a terribly sharp fall off on your lips or around the rims of your lips, or it will look like they're wearing lip gloss or lipstick. So yeah, I'm going to be layering up all this color on one shader and baking it out to do my test renders the same way that I did with the fine displacement. Depending on your, I'm using a very basic testing shader for this. It's basically just a material with some specular settings and some subsurface turned on. Depending on how you set things up, you might want to break your color into two shaders and bake them out. So if you're using subdermal and epidermal coloring for your subsurface, it's just great to be able to paint it all in one scene, even though you don't have the subsurface reaction, obviously, when you're painting it. It's kind of a neat way of dealing with things. I do wonder how long it'll be before we're painting on models with subsurface scattering. That'll be wild. Had some messy splatter on the back of the head. I'm just removing and filling in. Again, getting a couple of blemishes building up there, which I'm pretty happy about. So yeah, just going in and basically shading around the larynx there. Try to add a bit of form to it. So that blue in the air is going to need to be broken up at some point. It's a bit heavy. It's a lot heavy. Yeah, airs is something that you can take a lot of time working on. Yeah, it's also one of those things where you have to split things out to the subsurface depending on how you're going to shade them. But I'm sure you've all done a lot of that before. Selecting by patch and hiding that horn so I'm getting on my way. And my, because I'm painting it on a strange angle, my edge mask is clipping the edge of where I'm painting, so I'm just dialing that right back. There's that little bit that's still being missed that I might have to go in and clean up in UV view. Or hide the faces to expose it. So yeah, just taking a soft brush and setting my projection to paint through. So I painted both sides of the ear simultaneously. Just want to make sure the so if I was to do it from this angle, I'd paint onto the skull. So just try and get some clear space behind it. Might have gone too far with that red. I might have to knock it back on the air a little bit, but alright, it's just adding a hot pink here. Just to add some blotchiness, some life to it. Just kind of an all over blotchy dusting. I think I'll dial this right back. It's just to add some variation. Just generally livening up some areas. Keeping it nice and blotchy, as I want a lot of the underlying jaundice yellow to show through in the end result.